Hey guys, this is going to be another little update on the mechanical side of things, right? This is going to cover Bitcoin and a bit of Euro. I've talked about a few things in the last the last couple of weeks really, in terms of this mechanical process. And I know a lot of you guys seem to like this, right? So, I guess kind of as all the other YouTubers say, don't forget to like this and click this and press this button and all that kind of shit. In the grand scheme of things, look, for me, this is just plain and simple, right? It's no editing, it's no work. It's just, looking at what I'm seeing in front of the charts. In the grand scheme of things, for me, there's a lot of kind of telltale signs, right? And regardless of whether you look at Euro, Bitcoin, so what I'll do is I'll cover Euro first, right? Because I know a lot of you guys will be looking for Bitcoin. So, if that's what you want, kind of skip a bit further forward and find obviously Bitcoin. But in the Euro sense, right? We were watching this kind of price build itself up earlier. I posted a couple of posts into the subscriber section. This was on Bitcoin there, Euro here. So what I was saying, look, is all the stocks are pointing to a drop, right? Now that was obviously all the stochastics looking like we were ready to move down. In terms of the bigger picture, this was kind of contradicting my view of DXY, right? I still like the idea of DXY up. I think there's still a bit of momentum to go. We're only a month away from the elections. So there's a lot of things that are kind of pointing in that direction for me, right? However, bringing it back to the mechanical kind of process and the mechanical system, one of the things that I was looking at is just kind of following the trend until we kind of end that trend, right? So there was a couple of key levels. We had this one here, which was a pretty strong level. Then we had the strong level, right? So this strong level is, going to be an awful lot of support for the price. The biggest question we're going to have is whether or not we are, likely to see a larger scale pullback, or whether the pullback to come back down and test these levels kind of one more time at least before we go, right? Now, this is part of the benefit. This is part of the beauty of looking at this type of setup, this type of trade, right? So obviously prior to the news, we were, sitting around this level. We then had the news. I believe we went kind of down and then ultimately up. So we've now come and started to create this sideways action, right? So there's nothing really on at the moment, right? But what we can do is if we zoom out a little bit more, so back to the 4 hour time frame, what we're seeing right now is we've pinged the first zone, first level, and we clearly didn't break that level and stay below that level, right? So at the moment, for me, the first signs, the first kind of level of intent is that we could be seeing the start of a pullback, right? We actually had, this high taken out as well. So unless this comes down and, starts to create signs on a 15-minute time frame that we're looking to retrace one more time, right? I'm actually starting to see this in a little bit more of a bullish type of sentiment, right? So with that being said, if I was to zoom out again one more time to the daily, what I'm looking at on the daily is we've actually had quite a lot of downward momentum, but we haven't really seen any pullback, right? I don't really regard this as much of a pullback, grand scheme of things. So what I would like to see is some kind of move, right? Now, obviously, this area here is going to be of interest. Whether we get up there, smaller time frame, in one straight move, or whether we start to see a bit of a sequence of moves playing itself out, right? Which is why I think for me there's still going to be another dip down lower, right? So what I want to do is to look on the daily. It does look like we've hyperextended down with not really much of a pullback. So I am expecting a pullback, right? Even if we break down, I think we're going to see something similar to this type of candle here, even at best case scenario, right? So with all of that being said, what I want to do now is look at this and say, okay, well, at the moment, there's nothing really on, right? We've rejected from an area of liquidity. That's kind of first tick in the box. Second tick in the box is going to be if we were to hold this, right? Now, we're going to know if we hold this, if we are to make a new high here. And the high on that level there is 09546, right? So we're currently playing around, where are we to close? 0936. So we're only talking, not even 20 pips, 18 pips or so from this particular range. And therefore, I think, we got to follow the trend on that smaller time frame from here, right? So at the moment, liquidity definitely ticking a box, but at the moment we are also still pretty much range bound. So sentiment for me is, if I'm continuing the current state of affairs, then we're still in this kind of negative trend, this bearish move. But expectations is to see some kind of dance up and above, right? We break this level, then obviously here's the next kind of target, the next kind of region, next area, right? So again, I've covered a lot of this in here, right? Just talking about why I think we're going to play around. Obviously, the news that we saw was positive, positive, negative, and that's positive, positive, negative in terms of the dollar. So I think for me, there's still a lot of momentum to the upside, right? So that's kind of euro done, sorted. I'll do another video when something else actually starts to, to move from here, right? At the moment, it's pretty choppy, and I'm kind of expecting that chop for the next couple of weeks, given we are only a couple of weeks from the election. Over to Bitcoin, right? Now, one of the things that I've talked about with Bitcoin is, if I look back into the Musing channel, I've talked about Bitcoin in terms of the current sentiment, right? We clearly had intent to the downside. What we've done is we've created a pretty large range, bigger picture. We then had a pullback in the opposite direction of that intent. We then come back down and failed to make a new lower low, which kind of brings me to believe that this is still partially part of a corrective move inside that bullish range, right? So given that there's nothing really bullish apart from this here being a higher high, I kind of feel this was the move down, which means we've got a high and a low, and this is actually range bound inside of that particular outer range, right? So if we look at what that means on the chart, we look at where we are on the chart now. Why can't I get rid of this? Let me take this out of the way. What I'm actually seeing is these two levels be in the larger range, right? And as you can see, I've marked this off. So these two levels be in the larger range. This was the move down, something that looks like this, right? Then we had the bullish move up. Now, the bullish move up here, right, was great in theory, because we've actually taken out a prior high. And for a lot of people on the smaller time frames, that's all they're going to be seeing. But then what we do is we come straight back down. We then break the structure here to the downside. And at the moment, we're still dropping, right? Now, as I said on the bigger time frame, we've got intent to the downside. This to me looks very much like current short form intent with a smaller time frame pullback. So I would like to see another dart down. I'm not going to look too far in terms of where those forecasts, where those projections are right now. This is more just the general bias, the general kind of direction in the grand scheme of things. So if we were to use this as our current sentiment, our current kind of situation, setup, whatever we want to talk about here, then the next level for me is to drop back down to a 15-minute time frame and say, what are we seeing, if anything, on this smaller time frame type move inside its own situation? Well, again, from those highs, we've had the first drop, crappy kind of pullback, next breaker structure. Similar thing, crappy pullback, breaker structure. Then we come to this low. Now, obviously, at this particular low, I'll mark this up, at this particular low, right, this is the very small time frame. Right, there's our low in terms of a down push, down move. So if we think of what we're doing right now, what we want to now do is come from that low and see if we can assess anything that's given us any kind of clue as to where or why next. So we've got clear level of liquidity up above. We've also got this little cluster. Let me just see if there's anything on there on the Mayfair one indicator. So nothing there apart from a bit of an increase in volume, right? So we clearly got a drop off in volume here. We got the point of control up high, which brings us back to the overall major swing, right? So I'm not seeing a move up there just yet. I think we're more likely to take this out before potentially coming back in any which way, right? Any, whether you're bullish or bearish or kind of sat on the fence. I kind of feel that right now, what we're actually looking at is up, down, right? I'm going to go probably all the way to the top, although there is a candle in there, right, that I could do another little move in. I think if I was to look two to the left, two to the right, I'm not really that bothered given this already happened. Probably a similar thing here. I could go 1, 2, 3. I could probably do a similar thing 1, 2, 3 there, right, just to be a bit more accurate. But in the grand scheme of things, what I'm currently seeing is this is my local high. This one here. I'll change this to maybe orange. And then what I'm seeing there right now is first drop, pullback, and failed at the local high. Another drop through, breaking the structure, but not really closing. So I think we're going to get another test a little bit higher, right? Again, depending on whether or not this holds. Then we get another test a little bit higher. And then what I'd like to see is a larger move down, at least down into this level. When we get to that level, I can obviously flip back up and look at the bigger time frame. But I think in the grand scheme of things, my current view on this is probably very small time frame, a little bit of up, medium time frame, a little bit more down, longer time frame, definitely more down. And then I think obviously we can zoom out into the bigger time frame and see where we go from there. All right. So that's how I'm kind of assessing this at the moment. I'm not really looking at anything else right now. We're still in that range. For me, nothing's changed in all of this time. We went up to 70K. That was only a couple of grand over the 69K from 2021, and therefore option 3 for me is playing itself out. This is a very long, boring, slow, horrible game. So in the grand scheme of things, no change. All right. Anyway, see you on the next stream. Thanks for watching, guys.